Rain clawed at the earth like a beast trying to rise from its grave. Wind howled through the blackened treetops, shrieking across the empty hills as if the land itself were mourning. Underneath a bruised and roiling sky, a lone figure rode the ridgeline, a man hunched in the saddle, cloak snapping behind him, eyes locked on the barely visible path ahead. His hat was pulled low, soaked through, but he didn't flinch from the storm. He rode like he'd done it 1,000 times, like there was nowhere behind him worth turning back for. Mud clung to his boots, caked the flanks of his mare, and pulled at the hooves with each step. The storm had rolled in faster than expected, and the trail, if it could be called that, was disappearing into muck and shadow. But he kept going, each step forward more from instinct than intent. He hadn't planned on stopping until the next town, and even then, just long enough for a meal and a stable roof. That's when he saw her. A wagon, old and splintered, leaned to one side off the trail like it had given up. Its rear wheel was buried in a deep rut, sucked in by the mire. A woman stood beside it, bracing against the wind, wrapped in a wool coat too thin for the weather. Her hair was plastered to her face, her bonnet lost to the gale. And she was digging, bare hands clawing at the mud around the wheel. He pulled, the reins without thinking. The horse grunted and slowed. She looked up as he approached, brown eyes wide with a mix of fear and pride. She had that look some folks got out here, the kind that said she didn't want help but she was damn near out of options. "Wheels stuck," he said simply. "I noticed," she snapped, breathless and flushed from cold and effort. He dismounted, boots sinking immediately into the mud. "You alone? That your business?" He looked at the sky. "Rain's not letting up. You'll freeze before you get it out. I'm not leaving it here. Didn't say you should." They worked in silence. She was breathless. Near, shivering but didn't stop. He wrapped a rope around the axle, tied it to his horse's saddle, and gave a soft command. The mare pulled. The wheel resisted, groaned, then jerked free with a wet squelch. The wagon shifted, threatening to tip but steadied. She stared at him like she couldn't decide if she should thank him or curse him. "You didn't have to do that. Didn't seem like you were getting far on your own." She climbed back, onto the wagon, her hands trembling. He could see then what she'd tried to hide, the round swell beneath her coat, heavy and unmistakable. "You're with child. Due in 3 weeks. He didn't answer. She flicked the reins, and the wagon lurched forward. He mounted up, fell into step beside her. "What's your name?" she asked after a long pause. "Does it matter?" "Only if I want to know who to curse if you turn out to be a thief." He gave a wry smile. "Just a drifter." "Drifter," she echoed. "That what you tell all the pregnant women you rescue?" "Only the stubborn ones." That earned the faintest curve of her mouth. Not a smile, just a flicker of it, quickly gone. They rode together in the storm, saying little, letting the silence fill with wind and the creak of old wood. After a mile, she gestured to a worn path leading off the trail. "My place is up. That way. If you're looking for a roof, you're welcome to stable your horse for the night. Storm's not dying anytime soon. I'll take that offer." The ranch was more memory than reality. Fences leaned at odd angles, the barns. Roof was half collapsed, and what few cattle remained were huddled near the broken gate, mud up to their knees. A windmill creaked in slow, tired rotations. The house stood at the center of it all, weathered but upright, like her, worn down but not broken. She parked the wagon near the barn and climbed down slowly, wincing as her feet hit the ground. He moved to steady her, but she waved him off. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass. I've seen glass with fewer cracks." Inside, the house was spare but clean. A fire smoldered in the hearth. The furniture was hand-built, mismatched. The kind of place patched together one desperate season at a time. She peeled off her coat and hung it by the door. He removed his hat, shook out the water. "You have a husband?" he asked, too direct, but this place didn't leave room for niceties. "Had," she said. "He died 6 months back, kicked by a steer. He bled out before I could get him to town." A silence followed. One he didn't try to fill. I kept it going, she said. Or tried. Winter hit hard. Fence lines failed. Then the well near dried up. I buried a dog, 3 calves, and my faith in the same month, but I'm still standing. That's worth something, right? He met her gaze. It is. She stirred. Stew over the fire. It smelled of salt and beans, little else. He offered to eat outside. She shook her head. Storm's not fit for anything. Sit. They ate in silence. The wood popped. Wind rattled the windows. Finally, she said, "You're not the first man to ride through here. Most see the ranch and ride faster. I'm not most. You said you're a drifter. Where you headed?" "Nowhere. Everywhere. Don't much matter." She looked at him hard. "Men like you always say that. Until something matters." He didn't answer, but something in her words lingered. That night, he bedded down in the barn, wrapped in a wool blanket she offered. Rain hammered the tin roof. The horses snorted and shifted. He lay staring up at the rafters, trying not to think. But memory came anyway. Red skies over Georgia, his brother's blood pooling in the dirt, the choking smell of gunpowder and loss. He had run from it for years, never staying long enough to let the ghosts catch up. He thought of her. A woman alone, pregnant, running a ranch on the edge of ruin. It was madness. Or courage. Maybe both. Morning broke slow and gray. The storm had passed, but the air smelled of damp earth and rot. He stepped outside, rolled his shoulders, stretched, the stiffness from his back. She was already up, sleeves rolled, hammer in hand, trying to repair a fence post. "You're out early," he said. "Fence won't fix itself." "I said I'd stay the night. Never said I wouldn't work." He took the hammer from her. She didn't stop him. They worked side by side. The post went in. Then another. He mended slats. She sorted the tools. By mid-morning, he'd forgotten the ache in his shoulders. By the 3rd day, the barn had a new roof. The horses were cleaned, brushed, fed. A chicken coop, once overrun with weeds, was cleared and rebuilt. She watched him from the porch, arms folded. "You act like you've done this before," she said. "I was raised on land like this, before the war. What made you leave?" He didn't answer, just kept hammering. She didn't ask again. That evening, as they sat on the porch, she told him about the land. "It's 40 acres, give or take. Used to be part of a larger spread. My husband inherited it after his father passed. He never liked cattle, but it's what we had. 40 acres isn't nothing. Feels like it is when the bank doesn't care." His eyes narrowed. "You owe?" "We did. I paid some off after I sold the horses, sold tools, even sold his watch. Still behind." He didn't respond, just stared into the distance. "You don't have to stay," she said after a while. "I can manage, I always do." He looked at her then, really looked. The lines around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand drifted unconsciously to her belly. "I'll stay. A week. Until the fence is done. And after that?" He shrugged. "Depends on the weather." That night, as the wind whispered through the grass and the fire crackled low, he lay awake again, staring at the stars through a crack in the roof. Something in him shifted subtly, like a door long shut had creaked open. The drifter had never meant to stay. But some places, some people, pulled at the bones like gravity. You couldn't see it. You couldn't name it. But you felt it. By the end of the week, the barn stood straight, the fences held, and the woman, still proud, still silent, watched him with new eyes. He packed his things, tied them to the saddle. "You're leaving then," she said. "Storm's past. So's the need." He hesitated. Then softly, "You got grit. That baby's got a mother who'd fight the world." She nodded, eyes unreadable. "Safe travels then." He started toward the gate, then paused. "Don't suppose your husband ever mentioned land deeds?" She frowned. "No, why?" "Found something in the barn, looked old. Map scratched behind a beam, her brow furrowed. I never saw a map. Could be nothing. Could be something. She stepped closer. Can you show me? He turned back, half smiling. I thought the need had passed. It might have just started. And with that, the wind shifted again. The gate creaked open. The road stretched long ahead, but for the first time in years, the drifter wasn't quite sure if he wanted to ride it. They found the map behind a warped cedar beam near the loft, tucked in a cracked leather pouch. The ink was faded, the paper yellowed and brittle at the edges. But the lines were there, clear enough to trace with a finger. Property markers, river bends, elevations, and a boundary drawn far wider than her 40-acre stretch. She stared at it in silence, the dust of years lifting into the air as though the past itself had been disturbed. This can't be right, she murmured. This land, it's marked way past the creek. He nodded slowly. More like 400 acres, maybe more. She looked up, her breath catching. But we only owned, your husband might not have known, he said. Or maybe someone didn't want him to. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the map. We need to take this to the town office. He studied her. The quiet resolve in her voice had sharpened into something new, something closer to steel. I'll ride with you, he said. The journey to town took half a day. They rode under a broad sky, the storm clouds long past, the air thick with the scent of wet sage and sun-baked mud. Her posture in the saddle was stiff but determined, one hand resting on her belly now and then as if reminding herself what she was fighting for. The town was small, no more than a main street and a scattering of buildings. But the land office sat tall at the far end, whitewashed walls, a rusted bell above the door. Inside, the clerk was an older man with pale eyes and a sharp tongue dulled by bureaucracy. She placed the map on the counter. I want to know who owns this land, he frowned. Where'd you get this? It was my husband's. He died. This was in our barn. The man squinted at the lines. Then he opened a thick ledger and ran a calloused finger down a column. Says here the Miller parcel was divided after the war, he muttered. But that notation, hold on. He fetched another volume, older, spine cracked. This is from before that name, your husband's, it's here. And so's the full acreage. Her pulse quickened. Then it's mine. He hesitated. Far as the law's concerned, yes. But land left idle. Folks get ideas, and not all of them legal. She stiffened. Who has those ideas? He didn't answer. Just closed the book. Outside, she stood on the steps, jaw clenched. Someone's taken what's mine, she said. He watched her. You're not alone in this. They returned before sundown. The wind was soft, the world deceptively calm. But something had shifted. The house felt watched. The gate creaked louder than before. That night she didn't sleep. Neither did he. At dawn, a rider appeared at the edge of the property. He was broad-shouldered, wearing a black duster and a wide grin that never touched his eyes. He didn't dismount. Just sat there staring. She stepped onto the porch. Can I help you? She called. Depends, the man said. You the widow Miller? I am. I heard you've been nosing around town records, stirring up dust, best left settled. Her mouth tightened. This land's mine. He chuckled. That's so? Funny, I've been running cattle through here for 2 years now. No complaints till yesterday. You had no right. He shrugged. No one stopped me. The drifter stepped onto the porch behind her, arms folded. The man's eyes flicked to him. You her new hand? Something like that. Well, friend, you might want to find a quieter patch of dirt. This place is cursed ground. The drifter smiled, slow and cold. I've seen cursed, this ain't it. The man's grin faded. He turned his horse. Be seeing you. They watched him ride off. She said nothing for a long time. He'll be back, the drifter said. She nodded. I know. That evening, He built a barricade at the main gate, reinforced the barn doors, moved the cattle to the inner paddock. She boiled water, sharpened knives, gathered what little ammunition they had. She moved with purpose now, no trace of the woman clawing at the mud weeks ago. Hardship had stripped away everything unnecessary, left behind a core of granite. "You're not just doing this for the land," he said. "No," she replied. "I'm doing it for my child, for something better." He nodded. It was the only answer he needed. The next day passed in tense quiet. No riders, no noise. But the feeling remained, like the earth itself was holding its breath. He found her in the barn that night, sitting by the mare. Her hands were stained with oil, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. "I know what you're thinking," she said before he spoke, "that it's not worth the fight." "I was thinking," he said, "that I've never seen someone hold so much storm in such a small frame." She smiled faintly. "You ever lose something that mattered?" He looked away. "A brother. Years ago. War took him. I left everything after that. Been drifting since." She nodded. "Grief don't leave. It just settles deeper." They sat in silence, the wind whispering through the cracks. "You don't have to stay," she said again. "I know," he replied. But he didn't move. The next morning, smoke rose on the horizon. He saw it first. A thin, dark column curling into the sky. "Brush fire?" she asked. "Set fire," he said, "meant to draw us out." They rode fast. The north pasture was ablaze. Dry grass caught like tinder. He rode ahead, used the shovel to cut a fire break. She followed, pulling water from the troughs, splashing flames, coughing through smoke. By the time it was out, the pasture was blackened. 2 calves dead. Fence scorched. He found the mark carved into a post, a crude R scorched into the wood. "Robidoux," he muttered. She didn't flinch. "I want him gone. Won't be that easy. I don't care." That night she drafted a letter to the sheriff. He wrote it to town himself. The sheriff, half asleep and slouched, read it slowly, then tossed it on the desk. "You really think I'm marching men onto Robidoux's land? Man's got 12 hands and half the council in his pocket." "It's her land," the drifter said. "Law says so." The sheriff shrugged. "Law's one thing, who enforces it's another." The drifter leaned forward. "She's pregnant, alone. If something happens to her, then I'll care," the sheriff interrupted. "Until then, best you keep your heads down." He left without another word. When he returned, she was in the field, planting seeds. It was too late in the season. The soil was poor, but she did it anyway. He told her the truth. She nodded, kept planting. "I figured," she said. "We'll do it without them. Even if it means war." She stood, back straight, face streaked with sweat and dirt. "Even then." That night she handed him a box. Inside was a revolver, old but oiled. "Was my father's," she said. "Then my husband's. Now yours if you'll carry it." He looked at her, then took it. On the third day, the riders came. 5 men, rifles slung, spurs clinking like threats. They didn't knock. She met them in the yard, the drifter at her side. "We're not here to talk," the lead man said. She held the deed in one hand. "This is mine. By law." He spat at her feet. "Then take it up with the judge. But the cattle stay, and if you set foot past that gate again, you'll be sorry." She didn't step back. "I already am," she said. "Sorry I didn't burn the whole damn pasture to stop men like you." They laughed. But the drifter didn't. He held the revolver, low at his side, not raised. "Not yet. You don't want this," he said. "I've seen what happens when boys play at war." The man sneered. "You gonna shoot me? Not unless you make me." For a moment the air held still, then one of them flinched, just a twitch. And the drifter moved. The revolver barked once. A hat flew, another step, and he had the barrel pressed to the chest of the leader. "Next time," the drifter said, voice even. "It won't be a warning." The men backed off, muttered curses, but they left. She watched them go, heart pounding, sweat cold on her back. "You could have killed him," she whispered. He holstered the weapon. Didn't want to, but I would've. She looked at him. Really looked. The scars on his knuckles, the weight in his eyes. You've seen more war than I ever will, and you've got more fight in you than most men I knew. The ranch was quiet that night. Too quiet. Neither of them said what they were thinking. They'll be back, and it'll be worse. But in the quiet, something else bloomed. Not peace, not yet, but understanding. He stayed by the door that night, rifle across his lap, eyes on the dark horizon. She didn't sleep either. And outside, the wind began to rise again. The third night came with no stars. Clouds rolled over the hills like smoke, thick and low, drowning the moonlight. The wind carried no scent of rain, only dust and dread. He sat on the porch with the rifle across his knees, eyes steady on the Wao fields where shadows shifted in ways that didn't feel natural. She moved silently behind him, a kerosene lamp in one hand. Her face, caught in the golden flicker, looked older than it had a month ago, sharper, worn, but still unyielding. She hadn't said much since the standoff. Words weren't necessary now. Every breath, every movement held its own language. He listened for hoofbeats, for metal striking stone, for breathing that wasn't theirs. Nothing came. Just wind and memory. Inside, the mare stirred uneasily. The livestock had grown skittish, restless, as if sensing the tension. She glanced toward the barn, then toward the open gate at the far end of the property, the same one the drifter hadn't been able to lock properly. It hung askew now, a soft creak marking its slow swing. "We should seal it," she said. "I'll take care of it," he replied, standing. She followed him halfway, hand resting over her stomach again. "You think they're watching?" She asked. "I'd bet on it." The gate moaned once more as he approached. It wasn't broken, but the bottom hinge was loose, dragging in the dirt. He adjusted it quietly, crouching low, straining to hear beyond the veil of night. That's when he felt it, a presence. Not sound, not sight. Just a prickle at the back of his neck. He turned fast, rifle raised, but the field behind him was empty. Too empty. He backed toward the house slowly, one step at a time, every nerve stretched thin. She met him at the porch. Her face said she knew. "Tomorrow," he muttered, "they'll come hard." She didn't flinch. "Then we'll be harder." He wanted to tell her she should run, hide, leave this battle to men who didn't carry life inside them, but he knew better than to waste breath. Back inside, they gathered what they could: dry goods, water skins, spare rounds, the old rifle from above the hearth. She took it down herself, wiped off the years of grime, checked the chamber with surprising confidence. "You've done this before," he said. "My father taught me to shoot before he taught me to read." He raised an eyebrow. Smart man. Dead man. That silenced them both. They barricaded the windows, pulled furniture across doors, spread ash from the fireplace across the thresholds. He told her stories he'd learned from scouts during the war, how to lay silent, how to blend into darkness, how to make 3 bullets count like 10. "I won't ask you to shoot," he said. "If they come into my home," she answered, "I won't need to be asked." By dawn, the stillness was unbearable. Not a bird sang, not a single hoofbeat or rustle. Just the sound of their breathing and the occasional groan of old wood under shifting weight. He was the first to spot them. A cluster of riders at the far ridge, too far to count, but enough to send a ripple of heat through his chest. They were organized this time, rifles visible. Shadows sharpened by intent. He stepped down from the porch. She followed. "No fear," she said. "I've got plenty," he answered. "I just know how to hide it." They positioned themselves carefully. She took the barn. He stayed near the house, rifle sight trained on the ridge. Minutes stretched like hours. Then came the movement. 4 riders split from the group, trotting down the slope with the kind of confidence that said they didn't expect resistance. One carried a white scrap on a pole. Truce or mockery it was. Hard to say. She emerged from the barn as they stopped 50 paces out, The leader, a lean man with a scar slicing across his cheek, raised a hand. "We came to talk," he called. "Talk ended 2 nights ago," the drifter replied. The man grinned. "Funny thing. My boss, Robidoux, he's a generous man. He says you can keep your house, even some of the land. Just give him the north pasture and access to the spring." The drifter didn't answer. She stepped forward. "This land is mine," she said. "Every inch. Bought and paid for. I won't give you a stone." Scarface laughed. "Lady, you're about to be a very lonely widow." Again, the drifter's rifle cracked once. Scarface's hat flew. The man flinched, blood trickling from a graze across his scalp. "You should go now," the drifter said. They didn't move for 3 heartbeats. Then they turned. The real attack came an hour later. No flag, no words, just thunder. Hooves roared. Across the ground, kicking up a dust storm behind them. 5 men rode in from the south, 3 from the east. He'd expected them. He'd laid traps. The first rider hit the tripwire near the cattle fence. His horse screamed, flailing. The man hit the ground hard, didn't get up. Another caught a spiked board buried in loose dirt. His leg snapped sideways. He howled, firing, wildly. The drifter dropped 2 more before they reached the house. Then came the gunfire, sharp, brutal, echoing like thunder. He reloaded behind the porch railing, counting shots, tracking movements. One man slipped past and made for the barn. He shouted, "Behind you!" She turned just in time, fired once, missed. The intruder tackled her, forcing the rifle away. The drifter charged. Too far, she fought, bit his shoulder, elbowed his chin. Screamed as the man raised a knife. Then a shot rang out. The drifter stopped. The intruder staggered back, a bullet in his chest. Behind him stood another figure. Tall. Silent. It was the native scout who'd passed through weeks ago, the one who'd helped during the flood. He lowered the rifle. Said nothing. The drifter nodded, heart pounding. "Didn't expect to see you again." The scout glanced at the woman, then the land. "I remember promises," he said. "You said this ground was sacred, that it mattered." He helped her to her feet, eyes scanning the horizon. "More coming," he said. Together, the 3 formed a line in front of the house. The second wave didn't make it far. 2 men dropped before reaching the porch. A third fled. The others followed. Their courage, forged by numbers, melted under gunfire and grit. When it was over, the air hung heavy with smoke and silence. Bodies littered the yard. Blood soaked the dirt. A hawk circled above, casting long shadows. The woman sat on the porch. Breathing hard, one hand pressed to her side, he rushed to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Just winded. The baby's fine." The scout stood over the fallen, eyes unreadable. "We should bury them," the woman said. He nodded. "We will." They dug until sunset. No one spoke of what came next. Whether Robidoux would send more, whether the sheriff would dare step in now. But something had shifted. Not just the battle. The bond between them, forged by fire and blood, had hardened into something that could not be named, something stronger than obligation or survival. That night, she sat with the scout by the fire, sharing food, asking questions in a tone laced with respect, not fear. The drifter watched her, how she carried herself, how she moved, how she protected her child, her land, her people. She was no longer just a widow. She was something else entirely now, and as the flames danced across her face, he realized something else too. He wasn't drifting anymore. Not really. Not with her. The land lay quiet in the days that followed, as if holding its breath. Burned patches in the soil, blackened posts, and bullet scars on the porch stood as reminders of the siege that had nearly broken them. But the sky stretched clearer now, blue and endless, and the breeze brought not the smell of blood but sage and dust. Life had returned cautiously, hesitantly. She walked the fields every morning. The child had shifted lower in her belly, slowing her steps but not her resolve. He followed behind, not out of duty, but because it felt right. They moved through the pasture together, fixing what could be fixed, counting livestock, restoring. The sense of rhythm the ranch once knew. The scout stayed too. Not for gratitude, not for glory, but because the land mattered to him. He spoke rarely but watched everything. The cattle, the trees, the sky, and her. The understanding between them was not verbal. It was in shared silences, in nods and small offerings, an arrowhead placed on the table, a repaired bridle left at the barn door. She welcomed him not as a guest but as someone who had always been meant to return. They worked, but always with an eye to the horizon. Robidoux had not made his move yet, but he would. The drifter knew the type. Men who hid behind others' bullets, who waited until the wound festered before cutting deeper. The last attack had not broken her, so now they would aim to unravel her instead, and unravel her they tried. First came the riders again, not in groups but alone or in pairs, always distant, always watching. She recognized some from the first assault, patched up and brave behind distance. He wanted to chase them down, but she stopped him. They want a response. They want us to act out of fear, she said. Let them grow impatient. He hated waiting. It made his skin itch. Made old war ghosts whisper. But she was right. And every time he looked at her, sweat on her brow, dirt under her nails, shoulders squared, he remembered that patience could be a weapon too. Then came the surveyor. He rode up one morning in a bright jacket, polite words dripping with falseness. I've come to clarify boundary lines, he said. You understand there's been some confusion. Records lost in the courthouse fire a few years back. Wouldn't want your property rights to get tangled. She stared at him, said nothing. The drifter stepped forward. This land's been in her family since before Texas flew its first flag. That confusion's on your boss, not her. The surveyor smiled thinly. Still, best if we recheck. Just to keep things friendly. The scout stepped into view then. Silent. Still. The surveyor's face twitched. No need for hostility, he muttered, backing his horse. We'll be in touch. He wasn't the last. More men came. Smiling. Civilized. Offering money. Promises. Threats wrapped in velvet. She refused them all. Then came the letter, scrawled in cruel ink, no signature. You're a guest on borrowed land. You and your bastard won't leave it alive. He can't protect you forever. He burned the letter before. She could see it, but she already knew. I won't give it up, she said one night as they sat beneath the stars. Even if it kills me. It might, he answered, but I'll make sure they pay dearly for it. She looked at him, then at the firelight dancing in his eyes. What made you stay? She asked softly. He hesitated. I've had no land, no people. I've fought for causes that fell apart. Watched too many good men bleed for lines on maps, but this place, this fight, feels different. She smiled sadly. It's not just the land, you know. He met her gaze. I know. But words were luxuries, and time was always short. They came again under moonlight just after the first frost, when the earth cracked under boots and breath came like smoke. This time it wasn't a siege. It was an abduction. They wanted her, gone. He'd taken to sleeping near the front door, rifle within reach. The scout slept beneath the stars, always facing east. When the barn doors creaked that night, no wind stirred. He was on his feet in seconds. The scream that followed stopped his heart. He bolted, barefoot, rifle in hand. She was gone. Tracks led, south toward the river gorge. The scout appeared like a ghost, silent and already mounted. She is not far, he said. They rode hard through the dark, thundering down ridges, across dried creeks, branches clawing at their faces. The moon lit the trail only in flashes, but it was enough. A broken spur, a torn piece of her dress snagged on brush, a smear of blood. He didn't let himself imagine why. They found her near the river bend, bound and bruised but still alive, still fighting. 3 men surrounded her, laughing, cruel, not expecting company. The drifter fired before they even turned. One dropped. The scout moved like lightning, arrows whistling. The third ran. The drifter caught him by the gorge's edge. The man spun, knife in hand. They grappled in the dirt, fists and fury. "You think you can save her?" The man spat. "Robidoux owns this land. He'll bury you both." The drifter slammed his head against stone. "Then I'll take him to hell with me." He stood, breathing hard, blood on his face. She was already trying to stand, refusing to be rescued. That stubborn pride made his chest ache. They rode home in silence. The scout rode ahead. He carried her close, one hand cradling her belly, the other gripping the reins. She didn't cry, didn't even tremble, just stared ahead, eyes hard. The final straw came 2 days later. A rider brought news from town. Robidoux had forged land titles, claimed she'd defaulted. A marshal, one of his own kin, was coming with papers. "You have until sundown tomorrow," the rider said smugly. The scout looked at her, then at the drifter. "You must show them," he said quietly. She nodded. "It's time." They rode to the tree line near the west pasture, to a spot she hadn't visited in years. Beneath an old stone was a rusted lockbox. Inside, her father's map. The original deed. A Spanish land grant with her family name scrawled in brown ink. More than that, survey lines that stretched well beyond the current fences. Miles of land untouched, unclaimed. "She owns half this valley," the drifter whispered. "More," said the scout. "This was once Comanche sacred ground. It was stolen. Twice." She stared at the document, heart pounding. "We take this to the capital," she said. "Let the law see it. They won't care," the drifter said. "Robidoux has the judges, the lawmen." "Then we don't take it to the law," she interrupted. "We take it to the people." That night, they rode to every neighboring ranch, told the story, showed the map. The valley wasn't just hers. It had once belonged to their ancestors too. Forgotten grants, overlaps, lies in county registries. The people stirred. At dawn, when Robidoux arrived with his false marshal, he found not 2 fighters, but a dozen. The scout stood in front, arrow drawn. The drifter flanked her, rifle raised, and she, with fire in her eyes, held the deed. "You come any closer," she said, "and I'll make sure every man in this valley hears the truth. You've stolen for years, but this land is mine. Not because of papers, but because I bled for it. Because I buried my husband on it. Because I'll birth my child here. Try to take it. See what happens." The marshal hesitated, looked around, saw faces he recognized. Farmers, cowboys, even old rivals now united. Robidoux sneered. "Fine," he said, "but you'll regret it." He turned his horse. "You already do," the drifter muttered, and just like that, they were gone. Victory came not with gunfire, but with grit, with unity, with the unshakable defiance of one woman who would not kneel. Days passed, then weeks. Peace returned, not as silence, but as laughter. Fences repaired, fields replanted. A baby born on a still night, crying under the stars. He held the child in shaking hands. A girl. Her eyes were fierce. The scout left soon after, wordless, leaving behind a bundle of sage and a carved eagle feather. He watched the horizon once more, but this time it didn't feel like something he had to chase. It was hers now, the land, the legacy, and he was part of it, no longer drifting, no longer lost, just home. And that was everything. If this story moved you, if the strength of the land of those who stand for what's right stirred something in your soul, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this tale with someone who believes in fighting for what matters. Until next time, keep your heart wild and your spirit unbroken.